I am very much positive that you have seen the massive amount of discussion in regards to ghosting and dimming within Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. The most recent episode, there was a ton of it, albeit not for long, but very, very excessive. This has stirred up the community quite a bit. There is currently a petition going around to remove this dimming and ghosting from the streamed version of Kaisen. Now, if you don't know what any of this is, don't worry, I'm going to go through it, explain it, because I think it's some... I believe you can thank Pokemon for this. There was an episode that aired a very long time ago that had a ton of fast-moving objects with flashing lights, and it was severely detrimental to the TV watching experience, to what I believe to be hundreds of people were affected by it, causing seizures and horrible side effects because of that fast movement and flashing lights. Understandable. Since then, ghosting and dimming has been utilized to quell this. It's basically required by law at this point if your show is airing on the television. Now, this could be different depending on time slots, but the way I think about it, if you're airing a show, afternoon, maybe a little bit later at night, that's kind of the general public. Someone flicking through the channel or walking past the TV, if you don't have ghosting and dimming, it's going to affect a lot of people. Now, if you were to push that time slot further back, 9 p.m., 10 p.m. even, while it is later and you lose the general audience, there's a chance you may not have to use that ghosting or dimming. Now, I could not confirm or deny this. I wouldn't be surprised if you just have to do it for total with everything that's on the TV, regardless of the time slot. But the conversation is very different when it comes to streaming. There's a lot of pick and choose when it comes to streaming capabilities. There's a ton of shows that don't utilize ghosting or dimming, whether it be practical or because legally they have to, on streaming platforms. Now, normally, if it's airing on TV, they'll probably have to do it. All the talented animators will go out of their way to kind of utilize it themselves. So they will not have this effect kind of layered on top of it, but instead rearrange the fight or dim the colors themselves or do certain tricks and things to make it more viewable. Instead of it just being a clumped up mess that just completely impossible to watch sometimes, it's a lot more purposeful by design. So let me clarify.
Leave a like and subscribe.
This is by no means a choice by the animation team. This is not something that they are purposefully using. This is quite directly done by Crunchyroll to adhere to the Japanese laws. Question, however, why can there not be two different versions? Why can there not be the TV version that is censored and has all the requirements needed under their law, but then for streaming, why can you not remove the dimming and ghosting and just put a warning in front of the episode? Think of how you would play a video game that has a photosensitive warning right at the beginning. That's kind of all they have to do. And if this streaming platform is global, I'm not too sure how they would have to adhere to certain laws within different countries, but I feel like that's a pretty standard one. Just, hey, this is going to be in the episode, we're putting it at the beginning. And you're kind of safe in that regard. You protect your own company and corporation. If you look past all of this, I'm not too sure why they don't do this. Why there's not two different versions. It's a different thing to ask for the animation team to change things or make it a little bit different, so it's not as flashy or not as dimmed, especially because they're already working so hard. That's a very tailored experience that sometimes can just be easily looked over. One person may think, oh, this isn't flashy or fast enough to require this type of practice, but as soon as you get it into the hands of corporations and legal teams, it's like, yeah, we definitely need it. There is a raw, I believe it's called a Genga, like the very early base animation drawings without the color that has already been made available online. I'm not too sure if I can show it, but there is no ghosting there. There's no dimming whatsoever, and the animation behind it, albeit very simple, very beautiful, very crystal clear, very crisp. This is something that everyone wanted to see. Obviously, when you add in everything else, color, clashing, effects, etc., that changes a lot of things. And clearly, Crunchyroll felt like they needed to ghost it and dim it themselves. So we go back to that question. If it's legally just for the television, why not have a different version on the streaming platform? Why not put a different type of warning? Is it possible for them to just put that warning at the beginning of the episode? You might think people are making a super big deal out of this, but when you go and watch that episode, and mind you, it's not like a crazy fight. It's not meant to be insanely animated. If you read the manga, you know that the fight itself is very simple. It's just Yuji throwing a ton of different punches, right? When you're watching that in motion, however, the ghosting and dimming is so bad that sometimes you just can't even tell what is going on. There's a big difference to be like, okay, like clearly this is dimmed, the Mekamaru, Mahito fight, whatever, and you could still see see what was going on. It was actually visible, but this fight was so much motion going into it, you just cannot see anything. God forbid you're watching it in less than 1080p, which a lot of people probably have to because of their internet. I'm surprised you can see anything. At some point it just morphs into a mosaic piece. To this extent, to this degree, it isn't okay. And while these things are being used for the betterment of people, which of course you want to protect people that are very sensitive to fast moving objects and flashing colors and lights, etc., of course, but there has to be a better way to go about this legally. Because let's be honest, it just ruins the overall experience, and you can't always expect the animation team, the hardworking people, to spend more time trying to jump around those practices so it doesn't have to be dimmed or ghosted. They're already backed up and fully prepared doing a lot of other things. This would take extra amount of time to do. I do think there is better ways to go about this. So we don't know the full length of the legal practice, what they have to adhere to in terms of television and TV, but one can assume ghosting and dimming has to be there for TV. We don't know if that depends on time slot, but it would make sense. General audience, flicking through channels, people walking past televisions, that's okay. For streaming platforms, however, it's very purposeful. You have to click on the episode. You can't accidentally watch it. So I would assume, and hopefully so, that you could create 2 different versions, even on the streaming platform itself, where the dimming and ghosting isn't available and just has a warning at the very beginning of the episode. That's it. Similar to how games function, you don't see a warning every single time unless the usage of that light is so incredibly excessive. It's very rare to see like a double photosensitive message within video games. I could probably name like 2 off the top of my head because the flashing lights within it is that severe. You have to like mentally prep yourself. Other than that, the little opening warning card is good enough. Could that be applied to streaming services? I don't know. But if you just look at the Blu-ray versions, because the Blu-ray doesn't have ghosting and dimming, it starts to become a little bit more sinister, a little bit more corporate, and almost a way to push Blu-ray sales further and further. It's like, hey, you don't want to see this crazy effects that we put on? Just buy the Blu-ray. It's crystal clear, it's clean, it's precise, it looks gorgeous, it's how it's meant to be viewed. You should buy the very overly priced Blu-ray. Now, a lot of people will because they like collecting, they like the Blu-rays, but I don't know if a big majority of people are buying Blu-rays so they can watch the premium experience. It seems very shady for corporations and companies to do, but that's their motto. They're going to try and nickel and dime in any way possible, and this isn't me accusing them, but if the shoe fits and you kind of get spat on enough, it's hard to believe it not to be so. This season has started off incredibly strong. Some beautiful animation, some beautiful fights, and it's only going to get better from here. But now there's doubt. Now there's a lot of people that are nervous that a lot of these fights, because they are big, they are flashy, some of them are really fast, that there's going to be a ton of this type of practice on these episodes, and you're overall killing the experience. And the last thing you want to do is come out of season 2 of Kaisen and be like, damn, that was such a letdown because I could not see what was going on. At some of the most crucial, time-sensitive, beautiful animation moments that you can imagine is just piled on top with a bunch of different effects. My hope is that they find a way around this, whether it be legally, practically, creating different versions, I don't know. Surely it cannot be that difficult for streaming services to communicate with the television committee and other streaming services like, hey, maybe we should have 2 different versions with different warnings. Yeah, it might seem a little bit impractical, a little bit more difficult to navigate, but at least the people watching it have a choice in that regard. The same way you give choice to putting a warning at the front of the episode. Oh, maybe I shouldn't watch this because, I'm sensitive to lights, which is perfectly fine. I appreciate the warning. Again, this might sound excessive. It's only 6, 7, 8 seconds in total, but the more consistent it becomes, the more fights that happen, the more you become aware of it. No one really talked about it in the Mechamaru fight because it was utilized pretty well. Like, sure, it was pretty dark, but I could still see what was going on. Of course, everyone's going to look at this a little differently. You may not care that the ghosting is there. Neither did I at first because, again, only a handful of seconds for each scene. But then I seen the original. I seen the intended way to view it, the raw storyboards of the animation, and I was shocked with how much detail was actually lost. I hope they're able. This season only gets more and more crazier from here. A lot more abilities, a lot more colors, a lot more speed and momentum, and the more they utilize this ghosting and dimming in such a severe way, the more the hype and the excitement for season 2 of Kaisen is just gonna plummet drastically. Because this episode, this fight is purposefully an opener. It's very simple in the manga. There's not all too much complexity to it whatsoever. The way the episode played out is basically how it does in the manga. We have much bigger, more complex scenes coming from here. Crazy background work, crazy physical altercations that are hand-to-hand combats, that are ability heavy, that are colorful heavy. There's so many different things. I don't know if Crunchyroll or other streaming services will acknowledge the fans and their request to hopefully have 2 different versions, or to let back on it or take it away entirely, but to give more choice in general, you know? And if by any means you're just trying to sell the Blu-ray version because hey, there's no ghosting and dimming in that, shame on you.